Chuck Prophet, welcome back. The new record, Bobby Fuller Died for Your Sins.
Thank you.
Is that the I Fought the Law, Bobby Fuller? Is that guy?
Yeah, for those who don't know, Bobby Fuller was a guy that came out of El Paso, Texas. He and his brother, Randy Fuller, had a band called the Bobby Fuller Four. And in the late 50s and early 60s, they just ruled the scene in El Paso. They had the biggest teen dance band that they could have. And Bobby Fuller was a real Buddy Holly protege, you know, and to the extent that they were so obsessed with Buddy Holly that after Buddy Holly died, they noticed that his records were recorded in Clovis, New Mexico. So they got in a car and they started asking around in New Mexico, and people said, "Yeah, you want to go over here? This is where the studio is." And Norman Petty, who ran the studio, was nice enough to give him a tour and also apparently a lecture on the perils of the music business, and which they didn't listen to, thankfully. And then they went back to as soon as they got in the car, the way the story goes is that Bobby turned to his brother Randy and he said, "Okay, we're going to need 2 Neumann microphones. We're going to need a couple bags of cement. We'll get to that later. And some corrugated tin." And what they did was they built a studio in their parents' living room. And they built by building a structure outside, they built a big reverb tank with the concrete and the corrugated tin. Wow. And he made some of his early records there. And wow. So he's a fascinating guy. And he met an untimely death.
Mysterious death,
yeah.
Right? He was found dead in his car. Nobody knows why, really.
Yeah, well,
he was 22 or 23 or something when he died?
He's really the ultimate rock and roll Babylon feel bad story. They got about as far as they could in El Paso, so they headed out to California in search of the California dream. And when they got there, not only were they totally out of step with the times, because by the time they got there, it was all about the Beach Boys and Bangs and the Byrds, and that's just the Bees. And they were these like greasers, you know, from Texas, but they did record a record when they got out there called "I Fought the Law," and it went up the charts. And unfortunately, Bobby was found dead in his car under mysterious circumstances in front of the apartment where he lived with his mom in Hollywood, and it was ruled a suicide. And it's never really been solved to this day.
That's a cheery little subject to name a record after.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
I'm sorry, but yeah.
It's a story. It's a powerful story, really. And, you know, it's funny because you are one of those artists you're so entertaining and jolly on stage, and a lot of your songs have a sense of humor, and then the poetry and the storytelling sneaks through, and this is some very heavy stuff that you're writing about and inspired by, but of course it feels good going down.
Well, I grew up in a true crime family, you know. I mean, my mother's church going, you know, grew up Catholic, but we had all those true crime books in our house, and I'm beginning to understand that that's probably where it started, you know. In fact, even recently, I called my mom and I said, "Hey, Mom, I was thinking about coming over." And she said, "Honey, not now, honey. Call me later. Cold Case Files is about to start." So, so I don't know.
She's got her priorities straight.
Yeah.
So you've been in San Francisco for a long time, and what are you still getting from your hometown as a songwriter? What you know, it's changed a lot.
You know, well, San Francisco has changed a lot. Yeah, the money came to town. Like New York or London or any other cities where, you know, people have been priced out, the money came to town, and it's become a place where only the rich need apply, and it's changed the city. You know, not all of it's bad, but most of it is, in my opinion. I mean, it's harder for me to keep a band together, and
because musicians can't afford to live in
town.
town.
A lot of the people that lived on the fringe have been forced out.
Yeah,
and you know.
And do you get some great paying gigs from the 20-something millionaires who want to hire you for their parties and stuff like that?
There's been a couple, not nearly enough.
No.
We did do a party one time for a startup company that became very famous, and that was actually a very big company, and it was just such a casual phone call that we played the gig, and then after we played, they were giving us a sort of a presentation, and they told us that it was top secret, and I was standing there with my band, and we were kind of leaning against this wall, and I was like, I'm sorry, guys. I should have asked for way more money. He just seemed like a normal guy. They were having a Christmas party or something.
So Chuck, you've been through this whole transition, really starting young and getting in a band and touring and getting signed to a major label and making records and then seeing the music business also kind of go through its disruptions. And you getting sober was part of this whole transition, but you've kind of come through all this stuff now, and you're still so productive. You're still really respected. You're busy. Are you able to even like think back and look at the music world in such a way so you could give someone some advice or like help somebody get started now or anything like that?
I mean, the money's always been tricky, and if that's where the conversation's going, I just kind of tune out, to be honest.
Yeah.
Streaming and, I just kind of tune out. It's always been hard. And, analog always sounded better, but it's not that big of a deal. If my friends want to have iPods or they want to listen to CDs, I'm not a purist weirdo. I don't care how the music gets in. The more I see people with these white things coming out of their ears, the more I see people going around listening to music. So, I mean, I'm okay with all that stuff. And what was the other question?
It all starts with the song, that's all.
The money or the...
Yeah. Just like advice for youngsters coming in. It's tough. It's a different world.
Well, I think you really need to listen to your heart, and, do something that you believe in. And if it's fun for you, well, then maybe other people will find it fun as well. Find your heroes, study the masters, but also don't forget that your heroes are pretty much full of it about a third of the time. So, as you learn when you get older, that's about all the advice I have.
Well, it's cool. It's cool that you have found a community too. We were talking with Brother Ali about finding these different communities, these sort of pockets of places and people where you can travel. And you've traveled a lot. I mean, you've been in lots and lots of other countries playing music, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so that makes you kind of a global citizen, so.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, we in the early days, we did a lot of European tours, and we played in places that bands hadn't really played, and certainly Green on Red did,
Yeah.
We had an Italian promoter that we used to work with, and we were always like, why don't we play like in the major cities? Oh, major cities, very bad, very bad, very bad. Okay, so we were always playing at like these not Elks Lodge, but they still had the Communist Party back. They still had the Communist Party back then, so we would play in these like Elks Lodge places on the edge of town, and we often played in places where they'd never even had a band before, And even after, even in like 5 or 10 years ago, I would get the occasional offer to go to like Serbia or Croatia. And, the first couple times I went solo. I just thought I'd like test the waters. I didn't really want to put my band through that. But then we've returned to, Belgrade and over the years, and it's turned out to be a great gig. And so,
you're going to have an opportunity later on. We all are to share the stage with Brother Ali and work with that. Have you been around hip hop artists or rappers before, or collaborated in any way before?
Yeah, I mean, I play guitar on some records, and I'm from San Francisco, and I worked with Mark Pistol. He's a producer, a hip hop producer, and sometimes they don't use real instruments, or you might overdub on a loop or something. But that stuff's kind of old hat now. I mean, everybody's kind of onto it. But in the early days, I did play on some recordings and things like that, and I always enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, we've got a special treat for you coming up. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. Right now, though, we've got a lot more music from Chuck. So these are all songs from your new record. I mean, all the songs we're doing now are from your new record, which is great. You just keep making them, yeah. Why look back?
I mean, it's funny, we were talking about the money earlier, and people love to talk about, how are we going to fix the music business and things like that. But I think if you gave me the truth serum, and really, if I was to really come clean, I don't think the fear is that I won't get paid or be able to make a living, because I don't have a job. I've never really had a job. Doesn't mean I'm making a living. I don't, but it's a good start. But I think my real fear would be that I would have to stop, and that's really what, as long as I can figure out ways to make records and go out and play shows and have a cool band, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you're still doing that, and we're glad you're here. We got a lot more music to get back to. Welcome back, if you would, Chuck Prophet.